This is the story of CFC, the National Rural Utilities Cooperative Finance Corporation. A generation ago, the nation's rural electric systems created this cooperative organization as their own financing company. We'll take a look back through the history of CFC to understand the reasons behind its creation and its mission. The story begins in the 1950s, a decade before CFC's creation. This was a period of rapid economic growth in America. Rural industry and agriculture were experiencing an unprecedented boom. Along with this boom came an increased demand for electricity and for federal funding to support this growth. By the late 50s, it became clear that even with a strong REA, the need for capital would soon outstrip supply.
It was at about the 1958 when it became apparent to me that if the REA borrowers were going to do what they told me they wanted to do, and I hoped that they would, that they were going to have more money than we were going to be able to convince the Congress to make available to us at the 2% interest rate.
At that point, we were getting $250 to $350 million a year, and that just wasn't anywhere near enough to meet the needs that we could see on the horizon. So we knew that we had to develop something to provide more capital than we were getting.
Faced with limitations on REA funding, Buckeye Power in Ohio financed its share of the new Cardinal Station plant with private capital. This was in 1963, and it marked the first time that the program had elected to use non-REA funds for a large-scale project. Jerry Katzen, a senior partner with the financial firm of Kuhn Loeb & Company, now part of Shearson Lehman Hutton Incorporated, helped to arrange the financing for Buckeye.
It was at the groundbreaking ceremony for the Buckeye Power Plant, which I had arranged the financing for, that I was introduced to Clyde Ellis, who was the general manager of NRECA. And Mr. Ellis asked me whether I felt, now that the Buckeye project had been financed, whether there was any other possibility for the private market to be brought into rural electric financing. I said I didn't know, but that it was a matter that was certainly worthy of study.
That conversation led to a report by Kuhn Loeb and NRECA identifying sources of alternate financing for the rural electric program. Based on this report, NRECA drafted legislation in 1966 to create a federally supported rural electric bank, patterned after the Farm Credit System.
It was introduced in both houses of Congress and went to hearing. At the same time, opposition developed in the private utility industry, and the opposition was overwhelming. My recollection is that over 100 utility executives testified against that bill.
By the time it finally was reported out of the House Ag Committee and sent to the Rules Committee, it was so badly butchered and left us so handicapped in trying to get a loan from REA that we knew it could never work.
They could have had their bill and they could have had their bank, but it would have been so hamstrung and so conditional and involved with so many adverse consequences that the bill lost its appeal. So it was finally killed in committee, and it died.
After the defeat of the rural electric bank legislation, the leaders of the program redirected their approach to supplemental financing. In 1967, with the support of REA, NRECA created the Long Range Study Committee to study the long-term needs of rural electrics and to develop a financing program to meet these needs. The committee members read like a who's who of the rural electric program. People like James R. Cobb, manager of Texas Electric Cooperatives, Vincent Slatt, manager of Inland Power and Light Company, and Virgil Harriet, manager of Sioux Valley Empire Electric Association. J.K. Smith, manager of the Kentucky Rural Electric Cooperative Corporation, was named chairman of the committee.
When the Long Range Study Committee started its work, I don't think there was one person involved in that work that had any idea how we were going to come out in the final end, in the final analysis. We explored every avenue that we could possibly explore from the standpoint of sources of financing. A lot of the rural electric system leaders said, well, why don't you go to Farm Credit and let them provide the capital? Well, we had 2 meetings with Farm Credit administrators and Farm Credit governors. And they told us then that they had no interest whatsoever in providing financing to the rural electric systems. Finally, we began to talk about establishing our own organization that would act for the rural electric systems in terms of providing supplemental financing. We knew in the beginning that if we were going to be effective with this recommendation, with this program, we had to get the NRECA membership involved. The rural electric systems themselves had to get involved with us. We set up a series of meetings to get around the country 2 or 3 times before we got through in order to get everybody involved, give everybody opportunity to be heard and participate in the discussions.
We didn't want any misunderstanding of what we were doing. On the one hand, we wanted to be sure that they understood that we were developing a supplemental financing mechanism to meet what we thought were going to be sizable additional needs, and that's the way it turned out, of course. But on the other hand, we didn't want them to somehow get the misunderstanding or the misconception that REA could be done without.
After we made the tour of the United States, that after we flew through, you know, Dallas and Denver and Bismarck, North Dakota, and all those places, after we made that trip, after the interim report was given out, and we came back with almost a unanimous vote from the people that heard the presentation. It was at the conclusion of that thing that we said, let's go.
In the fall of 1968, satisfied that they had the support of the Rural Electric Program, the Long Range Study Committee began concentrating on developing a framework for a private financing corporation. The committee defined certain criteria for the new organization: that it must be independent of government funding and legislative controls, that it must be a cooperative, owned and controlled by the rural electric systems, and that it must have a solid financial base to ensure access by the rural electric systems to capital at any time in the future. Under these guidelines, the committee set about to define the structure of this unique financing entity.
In that discussion also, there was quite a bit of division in our committee and in the members of the rural electric system. Why establish another organization? Why shouldn't it be NRECA? Why not make it a division of NRECA? And in the final analysis, our committee came to the conclusion that it would be much more effective if we had a separate organization, and that you just couldn't mix. We didn't think at the time that you couldn't mix politics and political activity with an organization that's going to be concerned with financing.
After several months of careful thought and debate, the committee presented its final report and recommendations to the NRECA Board of Directors at a special meeting on January 8, 1969. Approved unanimously by the NRECA Board, the report was then submitted for action at the annual meeting in Atlantic City 2 months later. On March 20th, 1969, the NRECA membership voted overwhelmingly to adopt the committee's recommendations and to create their own financing institution, CFC.
I think the vast majority of the membership did understand that they were taking a big and decisive step in creating CFC. And I think many of them were quite proud of stepping up to the responsibility and saying we're going to do it, and then proceeding to do it.
Within a year and a half of CFC's incorporation, 700 rural electric cooperatives had become members, investing over $39 million in equity in the fast-growing company. In December of 1970, CFC began making short-term loans to its members with funds from this equity pool. After working out the supplemental financing arrangements and lien accommodation with REA, CFC started making concurrent long-term loans. By the end of fiscal year 1971, CFC had approved over 400 loans, totaling more than $130 million. The rapidly escalating number of loan requests pointed to a need for additional capital in the future. Realizing this, CFC turned its attention to the financial markets.
It was clear that what we needed to do as a new financial organization that nobody had ever heard of on Wall Street or among the banks, etc., it was clear that somebody needed to contact that outside world and get the word out about CFC in preparation for for our major fundraising activities or money-raising activities. We would approach them by describing the purpose of CFC, why it was created, and stress, of course, the very estimable credit record of the rural electric co-ops. That was very important, of course, because our credit and credibility would very much be based upon that of our members, and so we would stress that.
These series of meetings with investors and bankers over a 2-year period paved the way for CFC's entry into the bond market in December 1972.
When we went to the market with that first issue, we got pretty good acceptance on it, and we got an A rating on it, which we had to have from the rating bureaus, and we sold them at a very attractive interest rate, and then we were off and flying.
CFC's decision to go to the financial markets in December turned out to be a timely move. 3 weeks after the bond sale went through, President Nixon unexpectedly ended the REA long-term loan program. Without warning, the rural electric systems suddenly found themselves without 2% federal financing.
All of a sudden we had a situation in which CFC, which we'd created, of course, to be a supplemental financing agency, of necessity had to become a primary financing agency. There wasn't any place else to go. I'll tell you, I've often thought how fortunate it is, and it wasn't just a matter of luck, but how fortunate we are that we developed CFC when we did. I don't know where we would have turned in 1972 when President Nixon terminated the program had we not had CFC.
The Nixon administration was determined to eliminate the REA program. And to a certain degree, I think the presence of CFC, the calming effect of systems knowing that there was capital available, allowed us sometime to develop a negotiated settlement.
The crucial part CFC played in bridging the crisis gave it a more prominent position in rural electric financing. It had shown that there was a cooperative organization standing ready and able to provide funding when REA either would not or could not do so. But CFC's role soon progressed far beyond serving as an alternate source of capital. As the business activities of the rural electric program expanded, CFC kept pace with these changes, developing new services to accommodate its members' needs. Among these were cash management services, such as the commercial paper program and CFC's paying agent service. New long-term loan programs were also developed by CFC, tailored to the rural electric's financial needs. These programs included 100% long-term loans, variable rate loans, and intermediate-term loans for interim financing. Power supply systems benefited from CFC's guarantee programs, enabling G&Ts to obtain excellent ratings on their bond issues. And CFC established the Associate Member Program to promote economic and community development in rural electric service areas.
Every one of our activities really has been in response to the members saying, we need this, and then us attempting to develop a program to match that need.
When you look at all the issues that have come up through the years now since 1969, I would have to say that I think basically CFC is sound in its approach, and I think it really has been a total success.
When I look back over the history of CFC, CFC is doing today things that I had not even envisioned at the time it was put together. I have watched CFC assume responsibilities that needed to be assumed and have done a remarkable job.
I think the cooperatives are proud of CFC, as they should be. It's something that they've done for themselves, and it's a very able financial organization, great strength, and it's provided tremendous service for them. I'm not sure that they all yet understand just how great an accomplishment CFC has been.
The original objective of CFC was to supplement the capital provided by REA. And that objective was met very early. The big thing about CFC is it has evolved and changed as the environment changed, as the industry changed, as the needs of the members changed. And all of the programs that have been created at the request of the rural electric system. And as we move forward, that's the objective of CFC, to make certain that the members have every service that they need, every financial resource that they need to make certain we're serving our member owners at the very lowest possible cost with the best electric service possible.